We're going to talk today about an idea, okay? And I'm going to crystallize this into a single point. Has everybody heard the term ideation before? Okay, so ideation is the thought process by which ideas are created. So ideas are not formed overnight. They're formed over spans, period of time. So it could be months, years. You know, let's take X-Men. X-Men was 20 years in the making. That's how long it took X-Men to actually get created. And the idea, the concept, began as one thing, ended up on the screen 20 years later. So we're going to talk a lot about that. There's a couple of rules before we get into the art of the idea that I want you to understand. All right, so these rules that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes can be applied to almost any sphere of influence, your families, your loved ones, business, leadership, and I want to go through them only as a way to give us a foundation. So we're talking about the same things as we go along today. The first rule is people do business. Businesses don't do business together. The people do business. So if you're at Disney and you represent Disney, Buena Vista Pictures, and your job is acquisition of documentaries, right? That's your job, right? Acquisition documentaries. You're out there looking for a documentary on the life of Christ. The person that's got that documentary is looking for you, not businesses. The businesses are just names of places you go to work and who pays you. But you're doing business with people. People have issues. They have bad days. They got good days. They got birthdays. They go on vacation. They take time off. If you put business in context of people, it'll help you understand why someone doesn't call you back right away, or understand why they don't respond by email. So I always like to tell people, think about, someone says, well, gee, I called them this morning. They haven't called me back. It may be their birthday. They could have the day off. They could be sick. Their child could need to go to daycare. So put your concept of business in terms of people. Relationships are first. If you hear nothing else I say today, hear me when I say, relationships matter most. You will get nowhere in life unless you have relationships. In 1997, I launched an entertainment company called Belmont Mills. We had an office in Charlotte, North Carolina, an office in Hollywood. The thing that was I didn't realize how many relationships I had in the business. The reason we were able to create about 92 hours of network programming in 6 years, generating about $2 million a year in revenue, was all because of relationships. Yeah, it had something to do with the ideas and some of the talented people we had, but really it was about the people we knew and how we knew them. What's a relationship? A relationship is something you build. You don't start a relationship overnight at full throttle. If you meet someone professionally, remember to acknowledge you met them. How do you do that? Send them a card. Send them a text. Hey, it was good having coffee. Let's do it again. I told some of you that I had lunch today with Dr. Clarence Oliver, kind of a educator here in this area. I've already sent him a card with a little Hava Java coupon in it, just for fun. Does he need the coupon? No, but it's fun. I'm building a relationship with Dr. Oliver. I don't know him very well, but he's well respected. I'm not trying to buy his love or buy his affection. I'm trying to build a relationship. So the next time he sees me, he'll remember that I had acknowledged you know him. When you meet people, remember to talk to them. Our culture, all right, is moving fast. I don't know about you, but when I watch TV at home, I'm watching it with my iPad. I got CNN scrolling over here, seeing what's going on, and my wife and I are watching a movie, and we're talking about something. Stuff going on. There's a new Nielsen report out that said 41% of Americans are active in two external forms of stimuli while watching television. So iPhone, iPad, or conversation, or reading the newspaper. So is it like you have three things going on? Imagine that. How do we connect? Relationships come from connection. As you're in the middle of building relationships, remember this: everyone needs to win. If you're negotiating something, and negotiating doesn't mean that you're sitting on a table and you're wrestling. You're just having a conversation. Everyone needs to win. They can't go back to their homes, their offices, their jobs, and say, well, I didn't get what we want. When you're talking, look for a win-win relationship. I've been in a lot of negotiations, especially about worldwide video rights, which is a big deal, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But in worldwide video rights negotiation, you're talking about your program being delivered to a certain zone of the world. The world's divided into 12 what they call retail zones. 12 retail zones. And your job, when you create your idea, is to sell them in all 12. Well, as you're negotiating these 12, everybody, the person you're negotiating with, they have to win. They have to win on price, maybe. They have to win on ego. They have to win. They got a premier exclusive. But people always have to win. You can't be a hog. I know a couple of people who don't believe this, and they don't go very far. The people who win, Ralph Winters, great example, who was our commencement speaker last year, he actually gives stuff away to get the deal done, which some people laugh at, but I think that's smart because he's building relationships. So these are ground rules. Create buy-in. You'll hear me talk about how ideas are created. Normally it's in teams. Normally it's never just you standing alone. But everybody's got to have a buy-in to your idea or your concept. If you're in a relationship, you want to go to a movie, you can't always do what you want to do. You've got to have buy-in. You've got to say, what do you want to do? Listen to the other person. Okay, commerce is the bottom line. You got to generate money. Money, and there's a scripture in Solomon wrote it, money answers all things. So money, commerce will drive your model. We're going to talk about that today. So these are the ground rules as we go forward, right? Excuse the formatting, how brilliantly it is. Kind of nice and whacked. But I do want you to know let's talk about how ideas are formed. I'm just going to walk through this quickly because I want to get to the meat. Ideas are formed with a conception. A conception is just a spark, an idea. It's a germ of an idea. It's not even a full thought. Dr. Rutland today gave you you heard about was it Tolkien? No, who was he talking about? The movie Lord of the Rings, and how that Hobbit in a hole started. That was a concept, but he didn't have no idea what that meant. It took 20 years for that to mature. So the concept, the germ of the idea, leads to the ideation. We talked about this a bit earlier. And ideation really is, how does your idea take form? Ideas are never, almost ever, like brilliance, and it happens. Ideas take time. Ideas take time to mature. Then comes the development of your project, and then comes the creation. We're going to spend our time right here in the area between conception and ideation. Okay, people don't talk about this a lot because it's a well-kept secret. This is where your projects, your ideas, your livelihood, your future is made or broken. Why? Because in this idea, in this stage, you need great thought. You need great input. And I want to talk to you first about the first thing you consider about your idea. So as you go along, you have this errant thought. You guys remember House Hunters? Anybody here watch House Hunters? Your parents watch House Hunters? Okay, so House Hunters, started by a guy in Memphis, Tennessee. He had this idea. He was out shooting. He was moving to Memphis, Tennessee, and so that his wife could see what the houses looked like, he shot with his video camera tour of the house, right? And, honey, over here. And the realtor was kind of narrating, and he edited something together for his wife and sent it to his wife. His wife worked at Scripps Howard, which is, as you know, Home and Garden Television. And she saw it and thought, hey, this makes a great show. Now, what is it, 7 years later? House Hunters International, House Hunters in like 18 different countries. Pretty cool stuff. But it came from an idea that took time to develop. The first thought is, right? Now, I want you to ask questions. If I move too fast, you don't understand something, I want you to ask questions. Back in the 60s and 70s, I don't know if you can see it, but the audience norm was pretty much a spiral. Just a big, huge bulk. What do I mean by the audience norm? You could reach the norm audience by network television. They're huge numbers, massive numbers, where you could, for example, there were only 6 national distribution outlets, ABC, CBS, NBC, and then eventually came Fox, and then along came some cable outlets. But primarily, your audience norm was this huge group of people. Easy way to reach them, national television. Right? Now you forward that a couple of years, the audience norm has become a bump. So that the outliers are audiences in this part of the world, in this part of the culture, and the norm has become smaller. What does this mean? This means that your audiences in the outlier groups have become larger. That's why HGTV can launch its own channel. That's why IDTV or Investigators Television or Oprah can launch their own channel, because it's in the outlier region. It's not it's not going after the norm audience in the center. It's going after the small outliers. Am I making sense? Everybody understand what I'm saying? So as you're thinking about your idea, who's going to participate? Who's going to watch? I have a friend in Charlotte who's got a YouTube channel, just quit his job at Bank of America. His YouTube channel is tying ties. How do you tie ties? I mean, you talk about an outlier. He's somewhere down here. He's got a small audience, but that audience can produce great revenue, great commerce. As you think about your idea, who's going to watch it? Who's going to participate? How many of you have an idea in this room? Something you'd like to pursue in your life? An idea, thought, movies, television, something you want to do, right? Who's going to watch? Ask yourself this question. Who's going to watch? How are they going to engage? Because if you can define who's going to watch and how they will engage, you will start then to narrow your idea. Ideas normally start way out here. And then as a creative person, you struggle to bring them into reality, right? Because it's always grandiose. I had an experience in this very room that was kind of wicked. You guys don't remember this guy. He was Andre Crouch. You guys ever heard of Andre Crouch? Okay. All right. So anyways, he was not here, but he came out with this song. And at one point, our class, I'm not sure Dr. Zwick will remember this. Maybe he doesn't want to remember this. But the task was you did a music video to one of his songs, right? And so the idea we started, and we had to do it in the studio. We had to do it with the cameras we had, which were those old, unbelievable things. Anyways, and we had this, we had a group of 4 of us. We had this massive ideas of swinging from the roof and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the idea was so big we could never get it done. It was too big. Now, make no little plans here is real. It is real. You don't make small plans at Oral Roberts University. But if you make real plans with real audiences in mind, you've got a shot at getting it done. A couple years, 2002, Belmont Mills, which was our company at the time, we presented to CBS Television the concept of doing a Mother's Day special. Our company became known as, we did specials. We counted, there were 18 days of the year that needed special television. Veterans Day, Rain Hawk Day, which none of you know about. There is Memorial Day, Labor Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, New Year's Eve. I mean, we had a special for every day of the week, every day you could possibly imagine. And we had part 1, part 2. We had all first day of baseball, first day of football. Anytime there was something significant, our company, our goal was to get something on the air that matched. That was our little focus. That was our world. So we had this Mother's Day special, Mary Lou Retton was going to host. So we defined the audience pretty tightly. We wanted sports moms who watch the show. Sports moms who had daughters and who everyone would recognize. So a broad audience. The target group was 34-year-old females with kids to 45 years old. So we went out, we sold advertisers on Procter & Gamble, drug manufacturers. The problem was that we didn't think about this very carefully. Okay, so a mother of 34 years old with one child is different than a mom 40 years old with 4 children. Just think about that. There's 4 times the diapers, a lot more concern. Normally you have an older one, one's almost on the way out the door, and there's a lot more concerns you have with 4 children than 1 child. So as a large part of what you will do with your idea is bring it into reality. So as we started to trim away at this idea and say, okay, we just want a couple of kids, young moms. Okay, great. So now that's not 40-year-old. Now you're talking 30 to 35-year-old. You start narrowing, winnowing your concept down to where you can really deliver the juice. So that's just an idea to say your idea needs to fall in some kind of audience pattern. The concept might be yours, but the idea cannot be. Okay, so this is probably not one of your funnest things to hear, but you can't own the idea. You can't, because you can never create it together. You can't create it by yourself. The ideation period requires a lot of incubation. 20 years for The Lord of the Rings. Significant. You guys ever heard of Tom Clancy, the author? You know, I love his books. I mean, he writes about Jack Ryan and Secret Service and all that stuff. Well, his books had been in publication for 20 years, and the first script written for 15 years before the first movie ever got done. These ideas take time, but it just can't rely on your thought alone. Ideas require teamwork. It requires people around you, people who don't think like you do, think differently. You want other people in your mud puddle. You don't want to be stirring it up by yourself. All right? So when you have a concept, it's a great way to go to a friend and say, hey, can you and I work on this together? Can you and I brainstorm? Can you and I tinker with this? Now, there's this copyright issue I'm going to deal with right now, and this is a secret nobody else knows. No, that's not true. Nobody else will tell you. Okay, so you have a concept. How do you protect it? Okay, this is worth all your tuition right here. This is worth, I'm serious, this will be worth all your tuition. It's called poor man copyright. You write the idea on a sheet of paper, or your concept on a sheet of paper as you know it. I mean, just as the thoughts, as much information as you have, the date you wrote it, what your mom was making, what you were wearing, the details of your life. And it's a concept piece, and you call it that. Give it a title. Make it look professional. And then you mail it to yourself, snail mail. And you mail 2 copies to yourself. And those copies come to you and you do not open them. You don't open them. You understand what I'm saying to you? Protect the concept. That you can protect. Does everybody understand what I'm saying to you right now? Okay. There's a great, phenomenal example. You remember the Dennis Miller Show is on HBO. I don't watch it, but no, it's on. You know who Dennis Miller is? Dennis Miller Live. Used to be on HBO. I don't know if it still is anymore. Well, before Dennis Miller came on the show, there was another guy. His name was Michael Wharton. Michael Wharton presented HBO with the same idea the day before Dennis Miller came in the door, right? So imagine Michael Wharton has this meeting with Sheila Nevins, and she pitches this. It's the same kind of show, irreverent comedy. It's skits, it's local news, it's blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Michael Wharton goes to a restaurant that night called El Capador. It's on Sunset Boulevard. And he is telling his wife how awesome it was. Now, not known to him, sitting directly behind him was a guy by the name of Dennis Miller. Now, Dennis Miller will never admit this, but I guarantee you this happened. So Dennis Miller hears the idea and he goes, that's me. I can do this. You know, Michael Wharton. Who would ever have a show named Michael Wharton? But Dennis Miller, I could do this. Guess what? Dennis Miller goes in the next day, pitches the same idea. No paper, nothing to Sheila Nevins. Sheila goes, that's brilliant. That is great. The Dennis Miller Show was on the air for, I guess, 8-10 years. Michael Wharton, you've never heard of Michael Wharton. Michael Wharton sued HBO, and he doesn't have to work the rest of his life because he had poor man's copyright. He had mailed himself a copy of this treatment. Now, he had taken it all out. He had set designs and all kinds of nonsense. But all he needed was just to prove that he had the idea, and it was sealed up. I remember because it was in the Hollywood Reporter. When he walked into court, he had his 2 envelopes, and he put it before the judge. And the judge opened the sealed envelope. And when the the seal, by the way, when the post office stamps it, it becomes a sealed document, a federal document. So really, I mean, it's worthy of its weight. So the judge opens the deal, and he sees the date on it was, like 3 months before the Dennis Miller deal. He's going, this is exactly what's on the air. So you never know what the truth is about Dennis Miller, but I know Michael Wharton is not working on purpose. Just not working. He doesn't need to, because he settled with HBO, and life is good. So just as a word to you, when you get your ideas, that is how you protect them. The concept might be yours, but the idea cannot be. Okay. Successful ideas are connected to a cultural current or a generational interest. Okay, so think about this for a minute. A cultural current, it's what's sweeping by at the moment. So think about the movies that are in right now. The movies that are grossing, it's all kind of in stream with a certain cultural current. So let's pick a movie. The Bourne trilogy, now 4, is it 4? The Bourne Legacy is 4 movies, right? So think about Bourne. It's it's become a cultural phenomenon. X-Men, same thing. It's built into the culture. The Marvel Comics series, it's become a cultural sweep. Now there are movies or documentaries that are based on generational interests. You remember the movie, where the GIs went back to Germany to find the one guy? Saving Private Ryan. Okay, that was based on a generational interest. And so for life, I always believe that those movies or those projects have more viability than the cultural pieces. Why? Because those are just part of history. They become, like, you remember where you were when you see that. It'll always be good on Memorial Day. Unfortunately, I'm always stuck on these holidays because I think they're valuable. So think about your projects. How does it relate to the culture? What's like the movie Facebook? By the way, it's one of the top grossing, I'll come right to you. Facebook is one of the top grossing DVDs of all times, downloads of all time, because of its cultural connectivity.